It's another Tuesday on Your View. Welcome to the show. I am Murayo Afolabi Brown. As always, I have the ladies with me. Today we have YK in the building.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
See, the queen, no, not the queen anymore, the king.
The king.
How is the king doing?
Immediately after the day after celebration, I had to travel. They were doing this exhibition of Fela in France, and they were going to
oh, yes, I saw that
give Femi the knighthood, you know. So I had to go for that. So I was about a week in France. Yeah. Then I can't go to the Western world and not go
stop when your daughter.
Grandchildren.
Now stay there.
So I took train. I took train
from France, yes.
to London.
How long were you there for? A whole month?
No. 2 weeks. In England, 2.5 weeks. I wasn't away for more than three weeks and a few days.
Well, because of celebration.
No, because of celebration. You know, because I'd gone that week off before celebration.
To have you back.
Welcome.
Did you rest?
Great. No. With 2 grandchildren.
This is your new eyeshadow. Did you learn it in the abroad? They're looking so pink this morning.
No, it's because maybe you haven't been on the show when I've done it before.
Lovely.
I like to experiment with my makeup, you know.
It's good.
So, and I always go on YouTube, you know, and
learn, all the time in your hands.
Learn
their customer.
On YouTube.
Let me come to the Nima. How are you doing?
Fine.
What's up? Anything interesting?
It's good to be. Let it sack me,
don't let it sack.
Let it not be about traffic again, because the tankers are
Mr. I was going to.
And tankers are still at our area. Just sat in traffic today. Just enjoying the traffic. Me, I've adjusted to it. Leave them more. Yeah. Give them more time and just enjoy the.
There's no petrol, though.
Yeah.
And so I think the only working terminal depot is the one in Ejegun. All the tankers, I have never seen that number of tankers before. For the past 2 weeks, I've been on our roads trying to get while the roads that is connecting to the terminal is under construction. They are doing Odojo, they are doing Mara Road. Everywhere is locked, cars can't pass, and then the tankers are insisting to pass that place to collect the fuel.
Well, they've told us that by the end of this year, this whole thing will be over. I'm really hoping that they can meet that deadline, because everybody's saying, Lagos, Ibadan, end of year. This other one, your area too, end of this year. We're hoping the train, we're expecting train. Remember they said train?
Testing the train.
The blue line of Kinikorin will be ready. So I'm really looking forward to the end of this year. All what our
it's just next month, though. This end.
Did you say they're testing it?
The train, yes.
The train.
So even on Sunday, no, they've not started carrying people. They're using it to carry cargo. They carry gravel, they put loads on it. They go slowly to Marina and back. So you can drive with them and then you meet them.
You're monitoring them.
And they live there, they park there every day. I see them.
How are you doing, Ajuri?
There's no fuel, no petrol. So yesterday we were at the filling station close to 9 p.m. From 5 p.m. that we started looking for. We didn't see all the way till we got to the island. So finally we saw somewhere, but the queue was crazy and it was very expensive.
It's about 200.
Welcome back.
Yeah, very expensive.
Welcome back to
you. Yes, 200 naira per liter.
So I don't know how people are going to be coping this period, because now and the heat is, you can literally fry your egg outside. The heat is
This is just
terrible.
Enjoy cold bath. This season, I love this season for cold bath. Okay, how much are they selling for abroad?
Are you comparing?
Am I a cow?
Is she the minister?
No,
I don't know why she's asking.
No, but you've just coming from their brother. Shouldn't you have observed how much they're selling?
I wanted to know whether it's better than
Thank you, Jai.
As a journalist that you are.
Why didn't you check observe the pump price? So we can.
I never compare the price there with the price here. The earning power there is what it is.
It's not about the earning power. It's the purchasing power. Same product. It's like I say, they want to buy
I just wanted to
know. The purchasing, the earning power of
you are buying Mac in UK. You're buying Mac, and it's not the same price. It's not the same Mac. When they say, because it's Nigeria, let us not buy it at 20 naira because it's Nigeria. No. You are buying Mac products. It's the same Mac in the UK. You're buying Nigeria.
Mac is made there. Petrol should be made here.
Yeah, we know that.
You have refused to fix the refineries.
That's right.
So please don't even go
Why
there.
you know that?
Don't go there. Mac is made there now.
What I'm saying is that the fact that you're still buying the Mac, there's Nigerian product. Are you not buying Nigerian product? There's the Mac.
Which one is the Nigerian product?
There's modular refineries. You
want to now go into argument mode. It's you that is arguing. I just asked a simple question.
The point I am making is that
in France there were queues, but their own queues are because of the Ukraine war.
That's where I was going with
the
this.
The point I'm making.
So maybe our own is because of the Ukraine war.
We're not producing this. We're not producing fuel in our country. As long as you're bringing it from the abroad, there's a certain price.
Yes,
so same product you're buying in the UK, you're saying to buy the same thing here because you're bringing it. Sadly,
we shouldn't have
that's the reality. Let's go on a break.
We shouldn't have to. We should have refinery.
We'll be right back. It's a deal.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
We're going to start with the nation. Via Atiku, PDP will lose in 2023 by Kokonso. How 1 million man PVC march for Tinubu shut down Kano. IG, Kogi no longer safe for criminals. 11 family members die of food poisoning, actually. Cut spending to rein in inflation, IMF tells federal government. Ekiti Assembly gets new female speaker. World Bank advises federal government on fiscal adjustments. Saka scores brace in England win. Senegal lose to Holland. Okay, which story are we starting with?
We start with the major headline.
Yes, start with the major headline.
So, Governor Wike, of course, again played host to the NNPP presidential candidate in the state to commission or inaugurate this is a Canterbury word, but to inaugurate the internal roads in Umuoha local government area constructed within 1 year by Governor Wike. There's a word before it, and I don't want to bite my tongue. And of course, in his largesse, the way he is, he also promised the presidential candidate of the NNPP that whenever you need to campaign in Rivers State, be rest assured I will provide logistics, just as he had promised the Labour Party candidate. And then the NNPP candidate felt they need to assure him, because, they were formerly party members in the PDP before he left to form the NNPP. And he says, well, without Rivers State, Lagos and Kano State, no candidate can win elections in Nigeria. Sadly, the PDP do not have control of Kano because he is there. Then Rivers State now, they're falling out with Governor Wike, and then he didn't elaborate on Lagos. But the PDP has answered him quickly that there's no evidence anywhere in the world that they would lose these 3 states that he mentioned. And so it should rest.
IMF has been advising Nigeria since yesterday. I think I saw a report yesterday saying that food prices will go today. The report is talking about the fact that the federal government must look beyond the monetary policies into fiscal policy. According to them, they've urged the authorities to, among others, channel investments into infrastructure, health, and education. IMF directors Tobias, Adrian, and Victor Gaspar were saying that our inflation had jumped from 20.77% in September last month to 21.09% just last month. The inflation figure is largely driven by soaring food and energy prices. Although our federal government, Kiakia, has replied them, they don't mind IMF saying that food prices are increasing. They said that Nigerians should not be afraid, the federal government, Nigerians should not be afraid of any form of food crisis, because the federal government has said that it is working with the International Monetary Fund to ensure, they're actually speaking against the International Monetary Fund. They're saying that they've put things in place with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, have opposed their submissions and said that they put measures in place to forestall increase in food prices, that we shouldn't mind IMF, that we shouldn't worry food prices will not be hiked during this period.
So the Inspector General of Police, Usman Akali Baba, yesterday was describing Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State as a dogged crime fighter who has made the state unsafe for criminals to thrive. He was speaking during an event that he went to visit him, and he said the Kogi State governor would never raise an alarm of not being in control of insecurity in his state, that he has always observed, and he's at the forefront leading security in the state. So he also mentioned the fact that he has never heard him crying that he's out of control, because he's always having communication and synergy with corporates and security agencies to ensure that security is very tight in Kogi State. That he can remember the number of times he had visited the force headquarters to, show his support to the security agencies. And that is why there's less crime in, the state of Kogi, saying that most of the crimes committed by Kogi indigenes are not even committed in Kogi State because there's no room for them to do that there. And so he's, you know, just saying how the governor has been of help to all the plans that they are making. The governor, on the other hand, responded by saying that he's been hearing from some quarters that some politicians will try and cause, you know, sort of mayhem during this political season, but that they are ready in their state to secure their people.
So the Ekiti states, in Ekiti State, there's a new speaker now. There is a new speaker in Ekiti State. They have impeached the former one, Mr. Buega Aribishogun, and put in Mrs. Adelugba. And apparently it was done, according to some sources, at 6 a.m. in the morning. They went there under heavy police protection and everything, and impeached the speaker. The speaker is, the former speaker is against it. According to him, they didn't only impeach him, they impeached 6 other ones, 6 other lawmakers. And he's saying it's illegal. Mrs. Adelugba is saying it is very illegal and that it's his fault. He did some things. We're not sure what he did. But according to sources, they are saying because he didn't do the bill, what do you call it?
Yes, the bill. He didn't sign a bill?
He didn't sign a bill, the supplementary budget for that's what the governor wants. Me, I don't know. Is what I read.
They said the former governor's hands was involved.
They are blaming the former governor as well. That it's very, very dirty. What I read in all is very
Punch.
dirty.
National carrier FG, the domestic airlines legal battle kicks off on Thursday. Kidnappers abduct ex-Akeredolu's aide, demand 100 million naira ransom. Politicians will use and dump your IG-1's policemen. Ogun PDP, Supreme Court orders retrial, party crisis worsens. Presidency, North can't dictate to others, says Adebanjo. Petrol, electricity subsidies hurting poor Nigerians, says World Bank. Hoodlums invade Atiku rally, supporters injured. Okay, who has the major headline?
The major headline. So the federal government has assembled a legal team to challenge the suits filed by domestic airlines seeking to support the establishment of a proposed national carrier. That's Nigeria Air. We've been talking about it in recent weeks. And they said that the legal team of government and a 10-man group representing the domestic airlines will meet in the court on Thursday. Issues pertaining to the proposed airline. So I think one of the issues, let me first of all mention the legal team representing the domestic airlines. So Nurini Jimo San, Professor A.B. Ahmad, Professor Y.B. Hassan, Emmanuel D.K. Habiba Nuhu, Ashraf Yusuf, Abubakar Nuhu, Zainab Mayaki, Okpeyemi Ajekibe, and UF Abdulatif. And I think one of the reasons they are fighting this national carrier is the fact that they feel it's not being transparent in how Nigeria is, liaising with a foreign airline to carry out this national carrier. That's one. Secondly, they found out that the government has proposed a 15-year tax moratorium for this new carrier, saying that it will be undue advantage. They would make more money and the domestic airlines may not be able to match up in terms of competition, and that would affect the masses. So that's why they're taking the matter to court, saying that since they don't have an opportunity to go have a roundtable conversation, the courts will be able to judge the matter and see how fair or unfair it is. But we're thinking about how we can develop our domestic production, factories, manufacturing abilities and all that. So if there's undue advantage given to the national carrier and a foreign collaboration, it would affect how the customers will now receive or be able to pay for. So you want to go for better services, and then the domestic airlines will suffer and likely pack up, which is not going to work for Nigeria.
Okay. Let me go on a quick break. When we come back, we continue with our reviews. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your view will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. We're still reviewing Punch. Who has the story? I was going to take the story about the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, has asked his policemen to be apolitical before, during, and after elections. He said he issued a warning in Kogi to State Police Command Headquarters in Lokoja. He said, let me sound a note of warning to you all. Be apolitical before and during after the elections. You must not allow yourselves to be used and dumped by politicians. You have a duty and responsibility to uphold the Constitution and to protect the lives and property of citizens. He also promised to look into the challenges facing the police officers, especially the rank and file, and view of providing an enabling environment for them to do their work. So he's telling them not to collect money from politicians.
I have the World Bank story in the Punch. So the World Bank just woke up and found out that, subsidies only benefit the rich households and reduce government spending on poor Nigerians.
They've always said that. They've always maintained that.
Wait, they just woke up.
So they say in their reports called the Nigerian Public Finance Review Reports for this year, they found out that for years, a large share of Nigeria's resources are financed inefficient and regressive subsidies for petrol, electricity, and foreign exchange. Not all of these subsidies are accounted for in the budget, which makes them difficult to track. And they now advise Nigeria, the World Bank, Nigeria's government urgently needs to strengthen fiscal management, create a unified, stable market-based exchange rate, phase out its costly, regressive fuel subsidy, and rationalize preferential trade restrictions and tax exemptions. This would lay the groundwork for the increase in public revenues and spending needed to improve development outcomes.
Exactly what IMF just said.
And they said that we are always coming to borrow to even pay off the subsidy. And the amounts that have so far spent for the year 2021 on subsidies is not even near equal to what we spent for health, education, and one other like that. The truth of the matter is that these are the same policy makers our government go to. And nobody thought that it was okay to finance the building of refineries across the country. But they financed the subsidy borrowing.
Okay,
So,
that's
the kidnappers abducted the Akeredolu's former aide, They went there through a boat and kidnapped him at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
And escaped through the boat. They're asking for 100 million. They called the wife they called the wife. He called the wife from the kidnappers then saying, please help me. So the police say they are doing everything to
get him back.
Yeah.
Wow. Really sad. Daily Sun quickly. 2023 U.S. reaffirms visa ban on the election riggers and endorse beavers. 2023, don't blame anybody if you sabotage Obi. Northern elders tell Southeast. Wike promises Kwankwaso logistic support. TMG raises concern about 2023 polls. APC plotted to compromise voters, says CUPP. Don't waste votes on party causing religious disharmony, Catholic bishop tells Nigerians. I pledge to move Nigeria from consumption to production, LP candidate tells editors nation that the nation would not work without competent leaders. Oshun statistician gives evidence on beavers, INEC to tender delicate certificates. Okay, which story are we starting with?
The people of the Southeast have been told not to blame anybody if the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, fails to win the polls simply because they fail to accord him the support that he deserves. This was said by the spokesman of the Northern Elders Forum, Dr. Hakeem Baba Ahmed, and he said that any suggestions that the North had picked is candidate is false. They have not picked anybody. They are trying to be very careful this time around because their hands were burnt in 2015. And they said what they are going to look for now is somebody who would come and solve Nigeria's problem. It doesn't matter where the person is from. But if they are saying that it's the turn of the Igbo, according to the gentleman's agreement that they have had, then it's only right that Igbo people surround and support their candidate, that every other part of the country has had a turn. It's just now that we're expecting that the Igbos will have a turn, but they must be seen to be united in, pushing that one. But they themselves are not in a hurry to, endorse anybody. That's the Northern Elders Forum. But they want somebody who will solve Nigeria's problems.
So the political counselor at the United States Embassy, Mr. Rolf Olson, has said that the United States is not interested in any particular candidate. They are also backing up the beavers, saying that this electronic transmission of voters is the only way to ensure the integrity of the Nigerian elections. According to them, let me even quote him specifically. He said that it never ceases to amaze me how often the comments they have is on social media and traditional media always talks about who the U.S. is leaning towards. That they don't have any party they're supporting. They don't have any preferred candidates. All they want is the integrity of the elections to be free and fair, and they're supporting that the beavers and the electoral transition of the votes of the results sheet are incredibly important, and they're important steps to forward the integrity of the polls and to ensure that everybody's voice is heard in the coming elections. I think that's pretty much what he said in the summary. Any other story in Daily Sun? Should we move on quickly now to the Vanguard? APC opposition parties bicker over the digital vote buying allegations. Ekiti Assembly Speaker impeached, suspend indefinitely. Kogi no longer safe for criminals, says IGP. How could oil thieves use technology to lay pipelines, says Mele Kyari. Can Sultan warn against electoral violence? And I'll wipe out Boko Haram, revive businesses, says Atiku at campaign in Gombe. Okay.
Okay, the group CEO of the NNPC Limited, Mele Kyari, was, of course, again, because I think he's over talking on this issue, decrying the spate of oil theft in the country while on a TV interview. And he kept talking about how that these oil thieves, they are so modern and gege in their activities, that they are deploying technology in their oil, in their thievery, that they have deep collaborations with those who are supposed to be protecting these pipelines. They have deep collaboration with the security agents as well. They can even be laying their pipes to the crude connections at night. They deploy heavy machinery to carry out these activities. But that the federal government, on its own way forward, that the federal government have decided to do a 24-hour surveillance with helicopters around to monitor and pipelines. And they've also given the contract to government Ekpemupolo's Titan, what's the name of that his company? Tantina Security Services, who are currently providing security along that, and the 4 billion. They are very quick. Yes. Okay. They are very quick.
They are very quick at finding this thing that has been going on for years.
Apart from giving the surveillance, the issue of surveillance, I wanted to hear whether he himself was saying that the NNPC is now deploying technology to track and monitor. Whatever kind of technology these people can use to steal can be used to track and monitor the activities.
Okay, so the presidential candidate of the PDP was in Gombe. He was telling that he will revive and expand the businesses. He said that if they vote him, he's pledging that he will ensure he will give the businesses the support to set up industries that will give you. He now reminded them, you know that was PDP that created the Dakinko Work Dam to provide electricity to the entire community. That will now do more for you. I promise you that if you elect me, what we have started, I will ensure electricity that it will be provided across, and it will be sufficient across the Northeast. Yes, so he was telling them it will go be yesterday. Any other story? Yes.
Meanwhile, hoodlums attacked the campaign.
PDP?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. 3 people were injured. So, yeah.
Oh, really sad indeed.
The police were manning one gate, and they came through another gate. And, women were running to the police for protection. Everybody was running for protection. It was really not nice at all.
Okay, let's have our final paper. Nigerian Tribune. Let's find a story not taking. UCH lost 661 doctors, pharmacists, nurses to brain drain between 2020 and now CMD, and now says CMD. Kogi no longer safe. We talked about that. EFCC secures final forfeiture of 775 million naira apartments linked to the ex-AGF Otunla Fadile. Another story. Ohanes Ndigbo, Afenifere, NEF, MBF call for renegotiation of the Nigeria's unity. Nigeria needs to elect competent leaders to make progress in 2023, says Peter Obi. Just as he promised Obi, Wike promises also Kwakanso for logistics support. Okay, any other story? Any story?
Yes, yeah.
It's Father Christmas.
Promising logistics support.
There was the Inclusive Security Dialogue held yesterday in Abuja, facilitated by the Global Peace Foundation in partnership with ADI International and Vision Africa. And the meeting was to provide platform for community leaders representing dissident Nigeria, militia, agitation groups, and we had the Christian Association of Nigeria Archbishop who attended. The Sultan of Sokoto was there. Alhaji Mohammed Saad Abubakar too was there, and they were all talking about electoral violence and trying to see how youths can stay away from that electoral violence, not allowing politicians to use them to cause that violence. And, you know, the Christian Association of Nigeria Archbishop went ahead to say that the government needs to do a lot more for young people so that they can deploy their energy into productivity, support their businesses, and, you know, help them to stay away from drugs.
Fantastic. That's all we can take on Front Page Review. When we come back, move on to our first segment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. So joining us on the show is the Assistant Principal Spokesman of the ruling party, APC Presidential Campaign Council, Mr. Ajuri Ngelale. Welcome to the show.
Truly a
We'll
privilege.
be discussing why Nigerians should vote for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the next president. We're so glad to have you.
Wow.
One of the things we always say is that we know you've been doing the media rounds a lot, going to different states, but we say, oh, you've not spoken to Nigerians until you come to Your View. It is here.
I know.
Nigerians are listening
Oh,
to
I
you. So
know.
you are here to tell us exactly what is going on. We are very interested in three key things: education, health, and the cost of food in the market.
Background.
Those three areas, that will be our focus of our conversation. But let's start with the conversation I was having with YK earlier. Somebody asked her, how much is fuel in the UK? And she said, how will she know? And I said, well, in the UK, you can't, all our products in the UK, those of us that bring it home, we are paying exactly the amount of money that is being paid, is being sold in the UK, in Nigeria. Same way with our fuel. Nigerians are asking, I mean, when YK went back to remind us that we should have actually created refineries.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be importing pollution. We know that, it's a given fact. We're still paying very below the actual rate of petrol.
Right.
How can we connect this somewhat to the price of food in the market? I don't know how we can link it.
Thank you.
somehow.
Yes, thank you very much, Mariah, for the opportunity. You know, the special women in my life, in my family, are all fans of this program.
Oh,
so to
great.
finally be here with you is
Our
it means
regards.
a lot to them and to me too. Let me say first of all that, you know, of course, we have, anytime I go on to radio stations, television stations in the country, and we talk about, you know, agriculture, for example, and what we've been able to do in terms of massively substituting imported rice with locally produced rice and many of these things. A lot of what comes back to me is, then why is it that the price is going up in the market for a bag of rice, for example? And you've alluded to the energy issue, which is very fundamental. You have a situation right now, and it's no strange thing to those who are familiar with what's going on geopolitically around the world now, that with the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, energy prices have just skyrocketed. Naturally, that's going to have a direct implication on the cost of production, the cost of processing, the cost of milling rice, for example, goes up when energy costs go up. That cost is passed to the end user, the consumer. So there's no real mystery around that aspect of it. And we have to just communicate that to our people. But the other part is we do have a situation where some of the beneficiaries of the various interventions that we've made, like the Anchor Borrowers Program, where we've put over 1 trillion naira into the hands in low interest capital in the hands of over 3 million farmers. They've taken some, I want to say some, not all, but a group of them have taken advantage of the government incentives, you know, through the Anchor Borrowers Program. But then instead of doing the right thing, which is ensuring that that supply is meeting the demand of, you know, the demands of the Nigerian market, they're taking it across the border and selling it in neighboring countries to make more money, right? Which is against the entire premise of the Anchor Borrowers Program. And what that ends up doing is it creates an artificial scarcity, which exactly increases the price. So that's one major problem. Fortunately, there is a solution. And rice is just one item that's affected by the phenomenon I've just explained. But there is a solution, twofold. And it's already kind of beginning implementation. And it's also in the manifesto of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which is this. Two major points of of satisfaction there. One is the issue of how we're going to establish commodity exchanges. Right now, what incentivizes that kind of unpatriotic behavior is a greedy pursuit of maximum profit, excessive profit, right? And one of the ways you deal with that is by establishing commodity boards across the country, which will establish a set base of minimum prices of all of the staple items in the country, so that every farmer in the country that is producing knows for a fact that this is the base level above which we will be able to sell. Below which items will not be selling. So there's a profit margin that is guaranteed, that they can rely on, it's predictable, and then they can produce on the basis of what they know the price is going to be. That's point number one. Then the second one, which is very important, is the establishment of storage grain reserves. Right now in the country, we're losing about 1/3 of all produce. Imagine just 1/3 of all the tomatoes, of all the various staples that we're producing in the country. We're losing 1/3 to lack of refrigeration facilities in our rural production hubs. We're losing it to poor rural road infrastructure, moving from the farms to the markets. We're losing a lot of foods. Security is a bit of a challenge, but that's not so much a challenge as the two factors I mentioned, in which create a lot of the loss, because this is where a lot of the food is getting spoiled. So with the storage grain reserves and refrigeration facilities, in the manifesto of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, what he's saying is that we are going to work with the state governments through a federally funded incentivization program that will see to the establishment of mass refrigeration facilities in all of our agricultural hubs across the entire federation. That's going to reduce a massive portion of what we're
let me
losing.
pause you for a second, because it's always important for me that we're communicating. I try to make sure that your view communicates to our viewers.
Absolutely.
So what you are saying that I'm understanding is that one of the major issues of anchor borrowers is the fact that these guys, government will give you money
money as well as seedlings.
They'll give you everything, money, they'll give you the enabling environment. Your produce happens. Instead of you to sell it to Nigerians, you sell it abroad because you get more money.
That is it.
Now, I'm saying to stop you from getting more money, to sell it, we'll give you a baseline. When that strategy comes in, you give a baseline money where at least you know your standard money is coming to you.
Absolutely.
Then
Nobody will sell under that baseline.
Yes, and secondly, they'll give you ability to store. So you don't have perished goods, so that you can have more.
Absolutely.
Just make it
absolutely. It's very
So
clear.
let's break that down.
Yes.
So storage already happens in silos, in small scales.
Yes.
I've interviewed someone who's already doing that business around K2. What are you trying to do when you talk about, the big storage? Are you going to kick these business guys out of business, or you're going to collaborate with them and put them in the system? That's one. Two, what's the baseline price likely to be? Is it going to, reduce profits? Is this to regulate capitalism, or what exactly are we looking
And then
at?
the second question, third question, just wanted to put that in, is how are we going to be sure? Because you are from the same government. It's the same government that is in power.
Right.
How come they haven't been able to put all this into practice? How do you want us to believe that? Because it's the same government you're working
Absolutely.
for. And how do you want us to believe that they are
it will be
actually going to
implemented.
come?
Well, this question you've just asked is something that goes across the sectors, right? Where naturally government is a continuum. And that's why, when we talk about the UK, we talk about the US and many other developed countries, we often forget that these countries are the product of several administrations over the course of several decades, meaning that one government lays a foundation, right? Then as you're laying that foundation, you may find that, we need to make this modification, we need to make this adjustment. Time runs out on that government. The next government comes in, and hopefully if they're competent, they see that and they make those modifications. So what happens is with President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, and this is very important for context, right? We went from a situation in 2015 where we're the largest importer of rice on the entire continent. We are today the largest producer of rice on the entire continent. When we talk about anchor borrowers, it's not to boast that we've done so much. It has actually had a tangible economic effect in the sense that by substituting $4 billion worth of foreign exchange that we were paying every year, $4 billion to import rice into this country, we have now been able to substantially substitute our local production, meaning that that $4 billion we're paying to import rice that we can produce locally, we're now able to apply that to fund our budget, to build roads, to build railways, to build the things that we're constructing across the country. So it has had a good effect. Now, the question is, in the process of incentivizing the farmers to produce locally, right, you can't anticipate certain problems before they happen. So you don't anticipate a certain segment of farmers to be unpatriotic, right, and to say, look, I'm going to go to Benin or I'm going to go to Niger Republic and sell this rice that government even gave me not just money, by the way, gave me seedlings, the actual seeds that I'm planting, they gave it to me. Gave me even the instruments used to till and all of that. And we're still going to conduct ourselves that way. That's not something you anticipate. But once you have seen it, you will now know what adjustments need to be made to now implement and forestall it from happening in the future. So that's the nature of governance.
Okay, so you come to our own question after this break. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. We still have Ajuri here with us. You're going to answer Nima's question about the collaboration with those who already have storages, and then the other question.
Absolutely. So we have essentially 50 years worth of deficit in terms of the non-availability of storage and refrigeration facilities across the country. So the last thing we want to do is to disincentivize our brothers and sisters in this country who are independently producing these facilities, establishing these facilities. If anything, we want to incentivize more further establishment of those facilities. So what we're doing is simply to upscale it and ensure that we have these facilities across all geopolitical zones of the country instead of just one or two food baskets. So it's really going to be a collaborative thing. Anybody who's operating independently can be rest assured that they're not only disincentivized, but they're actually going to be incentivized to continue establishing those, both private and then the public ones will be doing with the state governments. And then I think you asked the other question about the pricing of staple items once we get these commodity boards and exchanges on ground. That's obviously going to be determined by the market, right? We're not a socialist state, so we're going to ensure that the market is able to drive that, but it's going to be certainly something that's calibrated, and government is going to be involved in bringing the various stakeholders together to ensure that the price is fair for everybody involved.
Yes, so the average Nigerian, if you ask me, is below that, living below that poverty line. We don't have that purchasing power, and Naira is really weak. And I am worried about the plans you have that your principal has to strengthen the Naira in such a way that we get back to that place where we are major exporters. How do we equip our industries to be able to manufacture? So we have a lot of natural resources, but we're not into manufacturing and modifying them into finished goods so that we can export. Is there any plan in that regard?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that's really what underpins the entire industrialization program of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is how we can make, primary the role of the Naira in our economy. There are a few things that I would just unpack there, but before I do, if you don't mind, I've gotten this question a lot from Nigerians across the country consistently about the exchange rate and why it is that right now in the market it's approximately 7.75 at last check for $1 in the parallel market, etc. It's important for Nigerians to appreciate one thing, which is that we have had an excess crude account in this country since 2004, right? And from 2004 to 2015, the first 11 years of the existence of that excess crude account, we had inflows of 107 billion US dollars, 107 billion US dollars in those 11 years. When President Muhammadu Buhari took office in 2015, the excess crude account had $2 billion in it, meaning that $105 billion were totally spent with really nothing to show for it. No hard infrastructure, no social investment programs, nothing, right? And as much as we don't like to talk too much about PDP and all of these things, it is very important for fact and for truth for people to understand that there is no magic bullet or magic wand solution to currency value maintenance. If you either have the reserves to bolster your currency at a time of economic shock, or you don't have it and it slides. That's the way it works. In fact, in October, the Japanese government spent $43 billion in 1 month to support the Japanese yen against the US dollar to maintain the value of its currency. This is what we're talking about. So when we say foreign reserves were spent from when Obasanjo left office, over $60 billion, to less than $28 billion when Mr. President took office in 2015, excess crude account gone, foreign reserves down, all of these things. This is why it matters. When you see currency sliding and there's no reserve that you can even go to try and bolster your currency, everybody has to receive the pain as a result of this mismanagement of a few people during a time when we were making so much money. And everybody knows during the first 6 years of this administration, oil prices had been consistently low, meaning that the excess crude never even grows. So these are the issues. Now, with that said, where we are now is how do we get out of this mess that has been created, right? And a major part of this is going to be the industrialization program. His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has a record in Lagos State of ensuring that there is a full vertical integration in terms of the various industries. So, for example, it's not just about producing soybean, for example. It's about how do we turn that soybean inside of Lagos, turn that soybean into vegetable oil, package it, sell it, so that we can earn maximum revenue from the items that we're producing locally. We want to nationalize that approach and basically say we must have full vertical integration, not just producing cocoa, but turning that cocoa into refined chocolate that we can sell locally and sell internationally for foreign exchange. The goal here now is in the industrialization plan, every region has its own items of comparative advantage. So, for example, we know in the Southwest, aside from the burgeoning tech sector that our youths are driving so effectively that we're going to be incentivizing as well, you have things like high-quality sand, clay, sand that can turn into a world-class glass-making industry, clay that can turn into a world-class ceramics production industry. If you go to the North Central, where you have so many different solid minerals that we can be turning, not just exploiting the raw, solid minerals and selling abroad and all of that, but actually turning that into a world-class jewelry industry. And I mean, the list goes on. So the idea is about the whole idea is basically full vertical integration. Not.
Let me ask about that vertical integration, for example, because right now there is something called the exclusive list and the
concurrent.
List. Right. We don't have the right. I'm in Southwest. I don't have the right to mine my clay or to get my clay and use that vertical integration. Would the federal government be the one to come to my territory to get the clay to produce, or would they give me the right as a region or as a state to tap in my resources to produce? How would that go?
Well, right now, we've already, and this is why we have to, our administration, I think if there's been one shortcoming of our administration that stands out, it's effective communication information. This is one area.
I'm wondering why, because you talk.
Well, I'm not the only person, my sister, and unfortunately, there is a lot of gap to be filled, and this is the point I want to make on this issue. On the issue of solid minerals, right now we have put in place a policy that allows every state government in the federation to form its own cooperative or its own state-owned corporation, for example, that can use that vehicle of a limited liability company owned by the state government that can now come in and effectively operate just like any other organization would operate. So, for example, you say, okay, in Lagos we have a particular, or in a place like Kogi where we have iron ore and we want to mine it. All it takes is just to form that LLC with the state government in holding controlling shares, and then the federal government will give you a full license to do whatever it is you want to do on that investing and then turning that into jewelry or whatever.
Why the government's not doing it?
See, this is why we say, and this is the thing, and this is why we always...
why are they actually fighting to be allowed to do it?
It comes back to the age-old issue of recruitment and leadership, and I'm not here to bash governors, okay? But the reality is, there are a lot of opportunities that state governments have failed to look into simply because they're myopically focused on sharing the little bit of allocation they're getting from the
I
federal
have to go on a break, Ajuri, because I want to go back to what Waike said. There's a trust issue because you're saying your government, as it is right now, has done a lot to enable government and state governments to do so much more
And
with
the
their
private
resources.
sector, yes.
And the private sector. But for some reason, all we know is that they're collecting from the center. We don't know this information because I would have gone to my government and said, you're allowed
Why
to
are you
mine
not?
this.
Absolutely,
So that,
absolutely.
but there's a trust issue. So how do we know that the APC, that these same governors, the same party, are not tapping their resources? How would they now do so in the new administration? When we're going to break, we'll be right back. We'll talk more about this.
Stay tuned. Your view will
Thanks for staying with us. So we're still here with Ajuri, and before the break, I was saying that I'm hearing for you for the first time, though I've been complaining that state governments are not able to tap into or mine their natural resources because, it's on an exclusive list. Now I'm hearing from you that there's been measures in place have been put to ensure that the government can actually put together a PLC and be a company to mine their resources themselves and get approval from the government. Now, many state governments are not doing that. So,
Why?
and that brings in the issue of trust that Waike was saying earlier, that if even within your party, they are not adhering to the opportunities that your principal had laid down, how do we know that this same APC government and this same government that will come in, they will do exactly what Asiwaju ever lays down in the next 4 years?
Well, it's very important to note that President Muhammadu Buhari can create the opportunity, he can create the environment for opportunities like this to exist, which he has done. He cannot compel a state governor to do what is in the interest of that state. That is what the people of that state elect that governor to do. If he cannot do it of his own volition, what can we do to help him to do his job? For example, the point I want to make is that in Lagos State, I'll give you an example. The Lagos State government has controlling shares over a company called Ibile Oil and Gas Company, right? It does not say Lagos State Oil and Gas Company, but at the same time, they're controlling that company. They have been able to leverage on the opportunities that exist in terms of domestic gas processing and utilization, providing domestic processed gas and all of that to the local market. That has had major revenue impact on the Lagos State government coffers. This is because the Lagos State government had the foresight and the understanding that we need to, as a state, take advantage of the opportunities that are present. The president didn't have to compel them. They knew what to do in the best interest of their state. Now, His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a man who laid the foundation, the roadmap for Lagos State to be the kind of state that would key into all of these opportunities, not just federal opportunities, but even the ones that are homegrown, the ones that are within the confines of what Lagos State can do as a fairly autonomous entity. They've taken advantage in terms of revenue generation and many of the other things. So the point is, we do have states that are keying in, but competence is not universal. Vision is not universal. What we can do is to ensure that we guide, we create the opportunities, we let them know about the opportunities, but we can't force the donkey to drink.
Let me just agree with you on that one, because if you talk about this ecology fund and the flood that will suffer this year, you'd see a clear example of competence not being general. Now, it's really confusing talking to you, being on this present administration side and then being on the campaign trail for the same party on another side, telling us things that you can do that we see that has not been done here. I do not understand the credit
Consumer credit
system thing. Can you break it down clearly?
Yeah, absolutely. This is fundamental. The main kind of role I'm playing today is looking at His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's Renewed Hope Manifesto and what exactly he's doing across sectors. It's not because I cannot spend 3 days breaking down all of the infrastructure projects, all the social investment and everything that President Muhammadu Buhari had successfully achieved. But for lack of time, we'll look at the consumer credit system. This, I think, in my own personal opinion, I believe that this is going to be probably the most fundamental aspect of the entire manifesto of His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because it affects not just the life of every Nigerian, but it cuts across sectors. And I want to explain exactly how this works. So we know that a major motivator for corruption in the country today is the fact that we're asking Nigerians to go and find money outside of their legitimate income, to go and buy a car up front with cash, to go buy a house up front with cash, to go and buy refrigerator and freezer up front with cash. We know that in any serious war on corruption has to now involve proactive measures that would go ahead of the problem rather than maybe focusing on prosecution and recovery after it's already been done. So one of the things that we're really focused on now is the establishment of this consumer credit system, which is going to involve a few things. One, we are going to, through the Central Bank of Nigeria, provide certain incentives to the banking industry in this country, all the banks that we know. We're going to provide things like enhanced monetary policy ratios, enhanced interbank settlement offers, and other incentives to incentivize them to create a bulk percentage of their lending, to set it aside for lending to the real sector, lending to the low-income and middle-income Nigerian citizen on low interest. So that's how that's going to work. We're also, while we give the carrot, there's also going to be a stick, meaning that if you are not complying with the need to ensure that Nigerians, the common, low-income, middle-income Nigerian, if you're not complying with the need for them to access cheap capital, then we are going to also create disincentives for you. So we're going to both compel you and incentivize you at the same time. That's point number one. Point number two is it's going to affect multiple sectors. So we recognize that if you're going to create millions of jobs constructing homes across the country, or millions of jobs producing automobiles across the country, not just at Innocent, but across the entire country, it requires a need to ensure that there is offtake. Because if you're paying so much to construct homes, you need to be sure that at the end of it, a Nigerian is able to take that home and pay for that home. Now, how are we going to do that? This is how it's going to work. His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has laid it out in his manifesto that essentially on day one in office, well as soon as the 10th Assembly is inaugurated in June, after he would be inaugurated in May, we're going to immediately reform the Land Use Act to standardize all of the processes and timelines around how developers will be able to access land in the country. We recognize that today it's a constitutional prerogative of the state governments to control access to land. So what we want to do is we want to ensure that whether you're in Kano, Lagos, Port Harcourt, or Bauchi, or Kogi, or any state of the Federation, you don't have a situation where in one state you can, from the time you submit your application as a developer for land to be able to build an estate, that it's 6 weeks in this place, but in another state it's 7 months, and you're paying bribes to the State Ministry of Lands and all sorts of problems because they have not streamlined their process. We want to standardize that process so that the timelines are the same, the procedures are the same, everything is the same, with the exception, obviously, of property valuations, which cannot be the same. Now, once that has been standardized, that's step one. The second step is we're going to provide tax credits and rebates and grants to all developers in this country, whether indigenous or whether foreign, who want to come in and build estates, that we're going to give them these tax credits and rebates and grants and incentives to ensure that they devote as much of their development, not to high-rise buildings and mansions for rich people, but to social housing. So in exchange for devoting as much of your development as possible to social housing, that is housing for low-income and middle-income Nigerians, we're going to be giving you these tax credits. And if you're building for the wealthy, that's your choice, but you're not going to benefit from government incentivization. Then that deals with the development side of it. Now, the third level is that once we have done that, because we have incentivized the banking industry in the country to set aside trillions of naira worth of cheap capital for lending to the low-income and middle-income Nigerian, that person, that low-income Nigerian saying, look, I'm a civil servant, I earn 120,000 naira a month, right? I want to own a home. I can give you my employment letter, I can show you my years of service, I can even show you my bank records to show that for the last 10 years I've been earning this much consistently, I've had these inflows consistently and all of that. So there's predictability. Once there's that predictability established, we can now say, okay, this is a faithful payer. We can rely that out of the 120, this person can afford to pay 20,000, 25,000 naira a month on a lease to own arrangement where he's paying monthly toward ownership of that home. Now you ask the question, how can that be enough? 25,000 naira a month. It sounds tiny, right? But this is what we found. Under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, and this is where we say, when we say Mr. President laid the foundation, this is what we mean. Through the economic sustainability plan that we put in place during COVID under the chairmanship of His Excellency the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, what we found out, we did a lot of research and we now implemented, is we found out that you can construct a one-bedroom house for 2 million naira. You can construct a 3-bedroom house, totally finished, from start to finish. Bathroom, 3 bedrooms, kitchen, everything, parlor, everything, for 3.75 million naira, finished. Then for 4-bedroom house for about 4.25 million, finished, 4 bedrooms.
Not in Lagos.
No, well, no, I'm talking of just the construction of the actual house. I'm not talking of land and all of that. I'm just talking about the house itself. Okay. So what the point is, when the profit incentive, when the focus is not how to make as much profit as possible, and you're just trying to provide the house for the citizen, if that is your goal, it can be done cheaply. So we can provide 15-year mortgages on 20,000 naira a month to the Nigerian worker, to the Nigerian civil servant, and also people who are in the private sector, the woman who owns a market stall. But she can show us that for the last 5 years, 10 years, this is what her income has been on a sustainable basis.
Okay,
amazing.
It's revolutionary. This thing is revolutionary. It's not politics.
Let me go on a break. I would like us to ingest that a bit, understand, and I'll come to BC when we come back. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your view.
Thanks for staying with us. We see Ajuri with us. I say, Ajuri, when you want to talk to Nigerians, you come to your view, because we are asking you the questions Nigerians want to hear.
Honestly.
Let me come to you, Ajuri.
Yes, so I like the consumer credit system you just explained. That's what we have abroad, where it seems like the gap between the rich and the poor is bridged. Once you're working, you're able to have a stable life. Your standard of living is guaranteed. Healthcare, everything is sorted. So if we get that, it makes a lot of sense. But let's go to healthcare. We have an issue in our hands, which is the brain drain. A lot of doctors are leaving the country. That's on one side. You get into the hospitals, you don't have access to doctors. The queues are so much, especially the public hospitals. The queues are terrible. You have an appointment, emergency, they are telling you to come back in 2 weeks, in 1 month, because you can't see anybody. So what's the plan for this administration to sort of settle that healthcare system so that the average Nigerian can have access when they need it?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. You know, so I think the core issue there is around a few things. One is we have not yet fully established a fully functional and well built public health insurance system. Yes, we know that we have the NHIS and all of that, and there's been a lot of reforms at the NHIS, but until we reach a point where Nigerians are not having to pay 100% out of pocket for every little thing that goes wrong, you're going to continue to have a situation where the investments we've made in our manpower in that sector are not going to be effectively or sufficiently incentivized to stay within the country. So, for example, almost everything in the country now, if you look at it, if it's not directly subsidized, there's almost like an indirect or unspoken subsidy. If you want to treat, you want to go and see a doctor for, maybe you're pregnant or whatever the case may be, you want to see a doctor for just a visit, you're going to pay something out of pocket. If you compare that to what you would pay even in neighboring Ghana or in Kenya or in South Africa, you cannot even begin to compare. It's the same issue with our education system. The university, you're paying 100,000 naira for a term or whatever the case may be, right? Very affordable. But then what ends up happening? There's a price to be paid. You have ASU strike as a result of the fact that the lecturers are working in institutions, physical buildings that are not up to snuff, roofing, leaking roofs, bathrooms you can't use, hostels that are not even functional to house our students and all of that. So you find out, you have to ask yourself the question, wait, is that 100,000, is it actually a good thing or is it a problem? If Nigerians are fair-minded people, if they're asked to pay what is required to have the very best of service in the country, they will pay it and they'll be fair about it. I think the problem is we try so much to either subsidize directly or shoot down the price of things at the expense of quality, and ultimately that leads to a kind of self-defeating cycle of, you know, whether it's exodus, brain drain across the sectors of healthcare and education, or whether it's just the overall quality of life in the country. Now, on healthcare, there are a few things. One, you have His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is promising for Nigerians to hold him to account on these promises. He's promising that in every Nigerian, across all the localities, all the local governments, that every person will be within 3 kilometers of a primary health facility. Of course, that is the constitutional prerogative of the state governments, but we're going to provide a federally funded incentivization program to ensure that the state governments have either your usual brick and mortar primary healthcare centers fully outfitted, refurbished, or this is an innovation we're bringing, is mobile primary health clinics. We want to have a situation where from, say, 8 to 1, you will know that we're here. From 1 to 5, you'll know that we're here, so that everybody will have access to some of these opportunities.
Actually, let me pause you for a second, because
Yes.
you've used the word incentivize so many times, and I'm thinking to myself,
because it's crucial.
That's money. I know, but that's money. And you incentivize because you're supporting with funds. Where will Asiwaju get the money from?
No, but well, there are a few things. One is, you have to understand, when I say incentivization, it doesn't mean that's 100% federal government funded incentivization. What it can be is counterpart funded incentivization. So we can say, look, we are going to, Mr. Governor, you're saying that you're having a difficult time paying salaries and you have all of these other constitutional obligations around primary health, primary education, which we know are really like 80% of the bulk of the burden in those various sectors. Now, what we're saying is, okay, we can bring, even if it's 25%, even if it's 30% for your 70%, or we can bring 40% for your 60%. Let us deal with the issue comprehensively, even if we have to partially fund it. That's the idea. Now, if you're talking about how government is going to raise revenue, a big part of this has to do with a few things. One, through the measures that we've put in place, with, we're looking at agriculture now, we're talking about a national mass clearing scheme where right now, my sister, most people don't even know that out of all the arable land in this country, only 35% today is under cultivation, meaning 2/3 of all the arable land in this country that can be producing so many different crops for our local and local use and all of that is lying fallow. Nobody's using it.
We know.
So now, well, not to the extent of the percentages. Most people don't know that. So now we have a situation where His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is saying we're going to get millions of Nigerian youth, particularly rural youth, to engage in a national mass land clearing exercise to ensure that we raise the percentage from 35% to 65% within the first 4 years of his administration. The reason why I'm going to the extent of defining the years of these promises is because we need to develop a political culture in the country that is not personality-based. It's based on what did you say you're going to do? Have you done it? That's how development happens. So we're being very precise and telling you how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, the means by which we're going to do it.
Ajuri, I can't allow you leave here without addressing security, because under this present administration...
Before you security, you know, there are some things that he said I just want to... You said that you are going to do the healthcare and what was it, the credit, and you're going to...
Consumer credit. Yeah, consumer credit system.
Consumer credit system, and you're going to, with the banks. Now, right now, the banks cannot even be controlled. The banks do what they want. You can use your POS, and the money doesn't even come, and nobody's holding the banks accountable. How is he going to be able to hold these banks accountable? One. For healthcare, how is he going to hold everyone accountable? Because even ordinary rice, this government cannot hold rice farmers accountable. They are doing as they wish. For me, the rice they call imported is cheaper than the rice that we
grow here.
So how are you going to make these things accountable? How are you going to make people accountable for these things? That's my problem.
Thank you very much. So, look, if you're talking about the transition in terms of imported rice versus locally produced rice, we're talking about an industry that
I'm not talking.
No,
of rice.
I know you are, but you raised a point I just want to touch on before I answer your question, which is that we're talking about an industry, a Nigerian industry right now that is more or less 7-8 years old, right? This is a new thing. Comparing it to imported rice, we've been sending billions of dollars to places like Thailand and China and Singapore and all these other places to produce our rice. These people have massive factories, very cheap labor, and all of that based on the Nigerian dollars that we've been spending to create a situation where they can produce that much rice very cheaply. So there is a transition point, and the reason why it is the way it is now is because we're transiting and doing the responsible thing, moving from funding millions of jobs overseas to funding those jobs within Nigeria. There is a process involved, and we're in that process no matter how painful. Now, the question about holding farmers accountable, holding banks to account. See, banks are not charitable organizations. They're not doing what they do because they like our faces or because they're our friends. They're in it to make money, right? So government absolutely does have the levers to be able to incentivize and disincentivize where appropriate to create the conditions of establishing a consumer credit system. Now, we can go back and forth on, why it has not happened yet. A big part of that can go to the fact that we've endured 2 economic recessions and a once-in-a-century global pandemic, which hit the revenues of everybody, including banks, where they were literally in a position where they would have had to sack several workers across the country if we had now tried to tell them how they're going to steer their lending and all of that. There are a lot of peculiar circumstances over the last 7 years that no other administration has had to grapple with. And even in view of that, we have 5 new international airports, 3 high-speed rail lines to show, and so many others. So we've come a long way. But again, there's a reason why we will elect a new government, and the reason is so that we can make value additive modifications to what President Muhammadu Buhari has already achieved.
Let me go on a break. When we come back, we take the last leg of this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Thanks for staying with us. We still have Ajuri with us. Yes, Nima had a question. Go ahead.
On security, because our eyes have seen. Our eyes have seen Pepe.
Yeah.
What exactly will be the modus for Asiwaju if he comes into power to combat security? Because Buhari did a lot of things. Anchors, borrowers, but every 10 gains they lost with security. Farmers were made to pay taxes to militants and all of that before they could carry their products out. What exactly, how do we combat this issue once and for all so that all the gains in education, back to school and all of that and farming, we will see them?
Thank you very much. Security is an area where, and again, this is one of the major conversations I have with Nigerians across the country, is one in which we measure our progress according to where we were and where we are now, not in terms of whether it has fully ended or not. So you recall that in 2015, when Mr. President took over, we had bombs going off across the country, all over Abuja, Kano, Kaduna, you name it. Almost, I was in the newsroom in those days when every single weekend we had a major bombing across the country that we were grappling with. Now, we've gone from a situation where those tax collectors that you're referring to, who occupied nearly a third of the northeastern geopolitical zone in various states, we have totally pushed them out. There's nothing like tax administration or any type of insurgent administration by insurgent groups in the country today, fully flushed them out. But we have seen, and obviously the bombings across the country are no longer happening. There's not been a single bomb attack in Abuja, thank God, since Mr. President took over. But the truth is that we still have the evolution of new threats. We have like bandits now, for example. Now,
kidnapping.
Kidnapping is not really new. That's
surged up.
yes,
it
kidnapping is
became
not
worse
new, but
under Buhari's administration, what would be different?
Yes,
My
exactly.
que-
No,
I
that's
know-
where we're
see,
going. No,
leave
that's it.
Bomino. I know what I'm asking
no,
you.
no.
What would be different?
No,
when-
I'm answering you, madam, but I have to answer you with context. I don't want to just say something.
Okay.
So the point is, this is what we've been able to do so far. Now, to your point about His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he's being very clear about the fact that there are a few things that need to be done. One, he's going to establish the anti-terrorist battalion. He wants to enhance specialization within our armed forces to deal specifically to the dynamic threats we face across the various theaters of operation in the country. His Excellency Asiwaju Tinubu is saying that we want to now establish a forest guard reserve that in real time, and this is part of the whole proactivity versus reactivity reorientation we want to conduct. In real time, we want to surveil all of our forests. We recognize that with drones, when you're flying over a forest, you have all of that tree cover and all of that. There's a limitation as to what you can see. We want to actually man our forests, particularly those hotbeds for bandits and kidnappers, so that in real time we can surveil them, equip them with unique transportation platforms, communication platforms, and of course the weapons that they need to be able to in real time surveil, so that we don't even leave open spaces for them to coalesce, gather, and plan attacks and kidnapping operations against our people across the country. I think that's going to be a major innovation. In addition to that, we also have to massively, upgrade both the quantity and quality of our armed forces, meaning that we'll recruit many more men across the various services, Navy, Air Force, and Army. But in addition to that, the quality of the men that we are bringing, men and women rather, that we're bringing into the service is going to be heavily prioritized. Same with the police. We want to have the very finest that we have. I'm not saying we don't have very fine men and women now. We certainly do. You've seen the excellent work they've been doing across the country. But we want it to just progressively get better and better and better. Ensure that recruitment is not on the basis of who you know or where you come from or who you worship, but on the basis of your individual quality. Then the last point on that, which is very, very fundamental, is His Excellency Asiwaju Tinubu is saying that we want to bring in a new federal compensation package for our armed forces that is going to ensure that any member of the armed forces, male or female, who makes the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of our nation. And by the way, that's another issue. We don't celebrate our armed forces enough in this country. In fact, we tend to blast them and condemn them and underappreciate what they're doing instead of praising them for the sacrifice that they're making that most people are unwilling to make. But on top of that, we're going to create an incentive, not an incentive program, but a compensation program so that all the widows who are left behind will receive a new benefits package monthly to ensure that they never have to worry about baseline economics of their household after their loved one has made the sacrifice. And secondly, we're going to provide scholarships for all of the children of the fallen heroes of this country. Those are some of the major things that we're going to
there's
bring
a question
into
I want to
there.
ask you because we're running out of time.
I wonder where all this money is coming from, because everything sounds so...
That's the same question they asked in Lagos. They said, where's the money going to come from? How did His Excellency Asiwaju Tinubu revolutionize the Lagosian economy?
Let me bring you to Lagos, because one of the strongest points
Yes.
the proponents for Asiwaju are leaning on is his success and the foundation of Lagos State, which we see. But these critics will say, why they keep using Lagos? Because Lagos used to be a former capital.
Yeah.
They had all this infrastructure. There was some development in Lagos. So there was nothing much that Asiwaju did. That's what these critics say. I'd like you to address that, because that's a major argument these critics use against this Lagos foundation that we all say that he did.
See, so this is the thing, right? We get into this a lot, and is people like to make vague, generic, and general arguments without any kind of respect for detail and data. So, for example, somebody will say, well, Lagos is a former capital, like you said. What has he actually achieved? Forgetting that in 1999, living in Lagos, you were here. I don't have to tell you who were here. What the infrastructure was like, even as a former capital, through all those military regimes, all the neglect, what was going on in Lagos State, the roads that were impassable. What was life like around the ports for the last 40 years, consistently, where you had potholes the size of vehicles, right, and all of that. Total transformation. And some of that obviously has to do with President Muhammadu Buhari's investment in the Apapa-Oronsheki Tollgate Road and several other federal investments. But in terms of what he has done in the state, you had a situation, he inherited a health sector. All of Lagos State, former capital and all the things that people say,
one ambulance. Try and imagine with me, you have a whole state, a federal capital, you have one ambulance. That is the level of decrepit neglect that Lagos had fallen into at that point. That's just one sector. How much more the schools across the state, the health sector, revenue generation. Revenue generation was essentially a kind of a kleptocratic feudal system where you just pay some middleman somewhere, and that's the end of the day. That's the end of the game.
Fashola worked.
What we have, they worked on a roadmap. My sister, His Excellency Babatunde Fashola, who is like a very senior mentor for me, told me directly, the same way he has told Nigerians on television and radio, that he could not have achieved what he achieved in Lagos State without the roadmap that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu laid. So if the men who succeeded His Excellency Asiwaju Tinubu are the ones coming out to say how important his plans were and how important his mentorship and guidance was in seeing through the roadmap that he established, how can some third party who was not involved at all now come and say it was this person and not the person who started it? It doesn't make any sense. So I would rather take the word of the successors than the people who are trying to say otherwise. But the point here is that my sister asked a fundamental question, which is, where are you going to get the money from? This was the point that people were making in Lagos State early on. Is when we had His Excellency Asiwaju Tinubu talked about an intrastate rail line, for example, a metro rail and all of that. People say, what kind of vision is this? This one no be America. We only get one ambulance for entire health sector. Look at not even basic road is available, and you're talking of rail line. Today, what is happening? The rail line. How did the rail line come about? It's not by dreaming. It's not by fiction. It's because he put in place a situation where we could move the revenues from 600 million to tens of billions on an annual cycle, even hundreds of billions now annually. The point is where you have vision, and where, most important, vision is just one part of it. The part of manifesting the vision has to do with putting the right people in the right places. I can tell you, as somebody who is sitting in President Muhammadu Buhari's government as an SSA to the president, and I don't hide this, is that His Excellency, Mr. President, has achieved so much with a grand vision for the country, laying the foundation in agriculture, infrastructure, social investment, and all these other things that we know about, massively arming the armed forces and all these other things. But there has also been a challenge in terms of officials at the senior levels of government who are not of the and I'm saying some, not all. Of course, we have a Babatunde Fashola, and we have several other very competent officials who are doing a great job every day. But there are also some who do not implement what the president's vision is across some of these sectors.
The security chiefs in his first term.
The point here is that every administration has had a situation where the president will have to sack and replace, right? This president has sacked and replaced ministers. It happened not too long ago, right? So the point here is that His Excellency Asiwaju Tinubu, a big part of his success is not that he just has great plans and a very sophisticated intellectual mind around developmental issues and all of that, but he also goes out of his way to say, this man or woman can do this, and if I have to go to Anambra to get that person, I will go to Anambra. If I have to go to Zamfara to get this person to do this, he will do it. How many other state governors can say they did that? How many officials can say they think like that? And so this is why we have confidence that His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will deliver on his manifesto, because he knows he can deliver.
We have just a minute left, so go ahead.
How do you want to Nigerians to? I want you to sell your candidate, because let me tell you how Nigerians are thinking. They feel that his age is against him. A lot of people feel his health is against him. And the third thing is, our president now goes abroad for treatment. And they're saying, if you build the hospitals here, you will not go for treatment. How do you want to tell us that, your principal will...
We'll do that. Let me add to that so you can answer it once and for all. Just to add to Ike's own. Because right now, it seems like we have a Jelenke presidency. And what Nigeria needs is somebody that can come and scatter everywhere and get everybody to work. Can Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu do exactly that?
At this time?
Fantastic questions. So I think let me start from the issue of the health and provision of hospitals and traveling abroad for medical treatment. I think on that issue, people downplay the fact that an individual's relationship with their personal doctor is absolutely personal. That is not a public thing. If there's somebody you have been seeing for the last 40, 50 years, who knows all your entire personal history, your ailments, your strengths, and all of that.
Transfer your doctor here, Ajuri.
No,
Bring your doctor to Nigeria. Don't do us like that. We're not doing that one.
No, we have to be truthful.
Bring your doctor to Nigeria. Let your doctor come and use the facility here to see you.
Please allow me to address my issues.
No, it's wrong now.
No, it's not wrong. If you have a personal doctor in any part of the world and you have that relationship with him and you're funding it yourself, you have that choice as an individual to maintain that relationship. Do you
After you've entered public office?
Well, if you choose to sell,
bring your doctor here. There's no
if you have a doctor that
I have to wrap up on this.
Okay.
Because
there's a lot. Anyway, we wasted a lot of time with that. The point here is that that's the nature of that relationship. That has nothing to do with the fact that in Lagos State, for example, where we have the Duchess International Hospital, which was co-funded by the Central Bank of Nigeria under this administration, right, where His Excellency the Vice President did a major leg surgery as well, very recently. What we're saying is that it's not just the public sector that will provide healthcare institutions in the country. We need to also incentivize the private sector the way that Mr. President has done and continue to do that. His Excellency Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of the first governors in this country that was able to attract mass, world-class specialist hospitals to Lagos State through the policies that incentivize the establishment of those institutions.
we have to run.
I wish we had more time, but I'll come back.
We'll bring you back.
to come back.
We
have more questions
We have a lot of questions for you, and I think you've been able to handle
You answer most with me.
But that's all we can take. Thank you very much. As I said, if you want to talk to Nigerians, you come to the
I hope I'm on the show next time you come back.
No, we have to.
That is all we can take on today's show. We'll bring Ajuri back because I'm sure we have lots of messages and questions. We'll bring you back to talk on issues that Nigerians are still thinking that they can get some answers. That's all we can take on today's show. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.